Hello class and welcome to week 8 of CLS 100. This week we'll be talking about career planning and choosing a major. So to begin with, all of the information we'll be looking at today is from chapter 13 in your textbook. And we'll start by looking at career planning. When you think about careers, one of the things that's important to remember is over the course of your lifetime, you'll probably change careers, not just jobs, careers 3 to 4 times. And what that means is that you need to equip yourself to be flexible, adaptable, and marketable in multiple areas. And so if you look at this slide, there are some basic, pieces of information and tips about career planning. And the first one says that the world of work is constantly changing. And the second point is that technology and globalization are key factors. The point is that a lot of the careers that you might pursue at some point later in your life don't even exist yet. And so what that means in terms of your preparation is that when you focus just on acquiring skills for a particular job right now, you limit your options and you limit your marketability later. And so it's important to, even at this stage in your life and at this stage in your career, to build up your transferable skills. And transferable skills are skills that apply to many different careers. So these would be things like communication skills, critical thinking, and problem solving. Think about your college education not just as basic skills training for a particular career or a particular job that you are pursuing after graduation, but think of this as an opportunity to build up transferable skills that will equip you for careers in the future that may not even exist yet. So you heard me use the terms job and career already in this mini lecture. And I want to point out that these things are not the same. What you want to do is you want to strive to find a career. A job is simply a place you go to complete tasks and earn a paycheck. But a career is something that you own, that enhances your life and brings eternal rewards along with monetary satisfaction. In other words, try to figure out what it is that you're called to do, what you're made for, what you're sort of wired to do. Think about kinds of things that you might do that you would have a get to and not a have to mentality about. What are you passionate about? What do you really want to do? Don't just think about it in terms of a paycheck. Think about it in terms of a career. Okay, so as you think about your future and you look forward, it's important to make good choices now. And what this slide lays out is 10 strategies that will help you plan effectively for your future. And all of these are critical to success, not only in school, but life. So the first thing you see on this list is make good grades. Your grades are important. They're something that follow you around throughout your life. So work hard in school. It's a reflection of how you'll work in the workplace. Second, acknowledge your abilities, values, and interests. In other words, understand yourself well enough to be able to make decisions about what careers make sense for you and what careers you might enjoy. Third, advance your technology skills. And fourth, hone your speaking, writing, and communication. This goes back to the idea of transferable skills and preparing yourself for careers in the future that may not even exist now. Also, actively explore your career options, get involved and stay active, give back to your community, use your summers wisely, which means that when you have time in the summer, if you aren't taking classes, find jobs in the areas that you want to pursue for a career, or do internships. Find ways to use that time to build your resume. Next would be expand your cultural and global knowledge. We do live in a global marketplace right now, and so anything you can do to expand your understanding, your global understanding, will make you more marketable. And finally, utilize your campus career center. There are resources available, so make sure that you use those. Okay, the next thing that we'll talk about is just sort of a summary of one of the sections in your textbook, which is actually something that I'm going to have you do as an assignment this week, and that is a career self-study. And essentially what the career self-study does is it's a way for you to look at your personality, your interests, your values, your needs, your wants, and to try to get a handle on those so that you can use that information to make informed decisions about a career. And if you look at the career self-study in your book, you'll notice that the questions deal with things like personality type, interests, physical versus mental work, values, where you want to live, do you want to travel, what motivates you, what are your skills, and do you like routine? So as you go through those and you answer those in the assignment for the week, hopefully you'll get a better idea of sort of what you want, what you need, what interests you, and be able to use that information as you explore careers. On that topic, something to think about is your major in school. Obviously, your career is tied in with the major you choose. And one thing that I would say on the front side is it's okay to not have a major right now. Don't be pressured to declare one just because everyone says you need one. You want to take time to make a wise choice. However, making that wise choice involves making smart decisions from the beginning of your college career forward. Time moves faster than you might think, and before long, if you don't take steps now, it will be late enough that you'll have to declare a major, and at that point, you may have classes that you don't need on your transcript, or you may be lacking in things that you actually did need. And so, here are some simple steps to career decision making. You can go through these on your own. I'll go through them sort of quickly. First of all, dream. Think about what you would do if there were no boundaries. If you could do anything in the world, what would it be? And try to figure out ways to make that happen. Second, go where the puck is going. This is a reference to a Wayne Gretzky quote, where Wayne Gretzky said that one of the ways he was successful in hockey was that instead of going where the puck was at, he always went to where the puck was going, which is the idea that you can make decisions based on anticipating where trends are going. Talk to your advisor, visit the Career Center on campus. Those are all things that sort of involve using the resources that are there. Use your electives wisely. Read, shadow or volunteer, and join pre-professional organizations. In other words, do things to get into the career fields that you're interested in. Get part-time jobs, get summer practicums or internships. Again, all of these just involve this idea that you should experiment when you can, get exposure to different fields, learn lots of different things, try to get some experience and figure out what you really want to do, and network in those areas as well. Okay, so now that we've talked about sort of the general career decision-making information, let's talk about job searches specifically. So in this section, we will talk about resumes, cover letters, interviews, and networking. And I want to start by going over sort of how all those pieces fit together. So what do each of those things do in the job search process? So first of all, the cover letter and the resume, which sort of go together, are keys to getting an interview. So you use those to get an interview. And the resume is typically more generic and just lays out your experience in education. So most of the time, your resume might be something that might be in sort of a single form that you'll print out a lot of different copies of, whereas the cover letter is something that you tailor to the specific job posting and company. And I think of it as your cover letter provides context to the resume, and it guides a search team in how to read your resume. So on your resume, you may have particular elements of your experience in education that are different or that are more important for different jobs. And so for each of those different jobs, you'll use the cover letter to point the team toward those specific sections of your resume. So if the cover letter and resume are keys to getting an interview, the interview then is the key to getting the job. So the cover letter and resume are important in getting the interview. The interview is what gets you the job. And networking then helps you get interviews. So the thing that you want to do is you want to focus on being good at all of these things. And always remember, and this is the one thing I want you to keep in mind as we go over all of this information, is sell them on what you can do for them. I used to teach business communication and used to teach cover letter and resume writing in the summers. And one of the things that I saw as a mistake from a lot of my students is they would write cover letters all about why they wanted the job, what the job could do for them. But if I'm an employer, I'm not that interested in what my job can do for you. I'm interested in what you can do for my company. So always focus on that. How can you sell them on what you can do for them? And so we'll start with looking at cover letters. So the main purpose of a cover letter is to get them to read your resume. That's what it says in your textbook. I would actually go a little bit farther than that and say that the cover letter oftentimes can be more important than your resume in kind of pointing out nuances of your resume and getting them to think about you in a particular way. It also tends to be sort of your first impression when it comes to that committee. And so some basic tips for cover letters. First of all, write it to be personally addressed and job specific. If you can, avoid the whole to whom it may concern thing. Address it to a specific person about a specific job. Second, your first paragraph should grab the attention and answer, why am I writing? Get their attention. Get them to read past the first sentence. The second and maybe third paragraphs should sell your qualifications for that job. Again, point out what it is that you can do for them. Use the job description, write it around that. Point them to your qualifications for the job. And the final paragraph should explain next steps. Be proactive, give a clear action step, tell them you'll be following up with them. And then finally, use action verbs and examples. Show them what you've done. Anybody can talk in abstract terms about things that they supposedly value or things that they think they can do. So show them the things you actually can do and have done as evidence that you can do the things that they need done. Okay, with your resume, there's a simple acronym in your book of doctor. And I think this is a useful acronym, and I'll go through what each of the letters stands for. So the D means design. With design, make sure that your resume looks visually appealing. What I would suggest is look at industry norms for your particular industry. If you're a graphic designer, you're probably going to have a much different looking resume than if you're applying for accounting jobs. O stands for objective. Make sure you have a job-specific objective. Objectives aren't always necessary, but if you do have one, make sure that you write it in a way that's job-specific and not so generic and abstract that it has no meaning. The C stands for clarity. No matter what you're applying for, be clear, be specific. Make sure that they know exactly what you can do. T is be truthful. Don't ever lie on your resume. It never works out. It's never a good idea. O is organization. With the organization, your book lays out several different organizations for resumes. Try to tailor it to what makes sense for the position you're applying for and for the company. And finally, R equals review. Make sure you have other people look at your resume and proofread it. One of the worst things you can do is have errors in your resume or your cover letter. One of the quickest ways to get your resume shuffled to the bottom of the pile is to have typos and grammar errors and proofreading mistakes in your materials. And the final thing I want to say about resumes is in your book in figure 13.4, there are lots of different resume tips. But remember that there are no hard and fast rules. Different types of jobs and different industries have different norms. The key is effectively selling yourself for the job and for the industry. So there are also tons of tips online that you can look up on your own. Resume resources are all over the place, so use them. Next, let's talk about references. When you choose references, you need to make good decisions. Obviously, you want to pick people that can speak to different qualifications that you have and that will say good things about you. But beyond that, there's a few other specifics to think about. First of all, select responsible individuals with good communication skills. These people are going to be reflecting on you, and so you want people who can effectively sell you to the companies. Second, get their permission and provide your resume to them. They may not know everything about your qualifications or your experience, so make sure that they're sort of up to speed on that. Third will be getting complete contact information. Make sure that when you put information down for references, that the email addresses, phone numbers, and addresses are actually correct. Next will be to send thank you letters or thank you cards to them. And then finally, develop a list of them to take to interviews with you. Sometimes they ask for references and sometimes they don't, but it's better to be prepared. Okay, the next thing I want to briefly talk about is networking. With networking, the key here to remember is that networking helps you get your resume to the top of what could otherwise be a very large pile. You've probably heard the cliche, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and there is some truth to that. For many jobs, there may be hundreds of applicants, and so having someone who is sort of on the inside to get your resume to the top of that pile can be important. So how do you network? Basically, you try to put yourself in situations where you can meet and get to know people in the industries and companies that you might want to work in and with. And so this slide gives you some basic ways of doing that. Attending events and conferences, joining professional organizations, using job search social networking sites, volunteering in the community, doing job shadowing, talking to the people you know, instructors, family members, contacts, use your college's career services, and even working with recruiters and temp agencies. All right, the next thing we'll talk about briefly is the 8 seconds rule. And basically what this means is that you have approximately 8 seconds to make an impression with your resume and cover letter, and you have even less time, probably around 4 seconds, to make a first impression during an interview. So your appearance and your nonverbals matter. First impressions can be hard to reverse because once we've formed an idea of someone in our mind, we tend to filter everything we learn about them through that model. So be attentive to the design and layout of your resume, the impression that it makes, proofread your cover letter. When you get an interview, think about your appearance, be attentive to your nonverbals, and just always, always, always be aware of first impressions. All right, what I want to talk about sort of last is interviewing. And there's kind of two main things that we'll talk about and a couple other things as well. And the first thing we'll talk about is interviewing tips using the REWARDS acronym from your book. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on these. I know this mini lecture is already getting sort of long, and you can read these on your own. But basically, what these do is they give you some basic general tips for any interview. And they're things like promoting your education, establishing rapport, giving positive responses, displaying confidence, and being sincere. The positive responses is important. You should never speak negatively about your current circumstances or past employers. Okay, the next thing we'll talk about is not in your textbook, so this is extremely important to pay attention to. When you go into interviews, one of the techniques that a lot of human resources departments have been using over the past several years is called behavior-based interviewing. And behavior-based interviewing involves giving you scenarios such as, tell me about a time when blank. So it might be, tell me about a time when you had to overcome adversity to get results or had to work with a difficult person or something like that. So what they do is instead of allowing you to talk in abstract generic terms about your values or what you think you might do, they get you to talk about things you actually did do. And the idea in the HR field is that they will get a more genuine understanding of what you're like as an employee by hearing about your actual behaviors. And so to be ready for those kinds of interview questions, I'm going to give you another basic acronym, and it's called the STAR technique. And STAR is an acronym for situation, task, activity, and result. And so what you should do to be prepared for a behavior-based interview is you should come up with 3 to 5 situations from your own experiences that you can use for a variety of behavior-based questions. And with those, for each one of those situations, you want to be able to talk about what the context was, the situation, what the task was, so what was required of you, the activity, what did you do, and the result, or obviously what was the result. So let's say that I had a situation where I was on a team in a job and I had to work with someone that I really didn't get along with. But we still had a deadline and we still had to produce results. I might have that in my back pocket for a behavior-based interview. And if someone asks me, talk about a time when you had to work with difficult personalities, I would explain the situation we were in. I would explain what we were required to do, what I specifically did to deal with that conflict, and how we produced good results in spite of that. All right, 5 things every interviewer wants to know. In any interview, no matter what they ask specifically, there are basically 5 things they want to find out. Why are you here? What can you do for us? What kind of person are you? What sets you apart from all the other people with the same skills? And can I afford you? And so always keep those things in mind as you answer questions, which goes to our next slide on interview questions. So think about those 5 questions as a starting point for anticipating what they'll ask you. Try to kind of interweave the answers to those previous 5 questions into all the specific answers that you give. Study the job description for clues about what they want to know. Use their questions as an opportunity to show off your research and knowledge of them. So you might say things like, well, when I did my research on your company, I know that you are this, this, and this. I could contribute in this way, and this way. Also, make sure you have a list of your own questions ready. Be prepared. Do your research. And finally, watch your nonverbals. Things like eye contact, posture, tone of voice, all of those things matter in an interview. Okay, so as we sort of reflect on this chapter, identify what you have to offer and learn to promote yourself, not only in an interview, but in your cover letter and your resume. It's all about selling yourself to a particular company for a particular job. Select appropriate references, create a dynamic cover letter and resume, shadow and do volunteer work, and present yourself at all times in a professional manner. That's it for week 8. See you next week for week 9.